From Yarm to Yibby, Harrington to Horsley Hill, Swarwell to Silverlink. Steve and Rye, the North East Footy Breakfast.
Right across the North East, the Red, the Toon and the Cat.
Well, you know, far be it from me to be the crystal ball reader of this very programme, but what did I predict? Newcastle win, Borough win, defeat for Sunderland. Sorry, Ted.
You were right. What a show for Ted to start his first one.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't even want to be here.
The kiss of death, mate. The kiss of death.
We haven't won a game since I was on, what was it, 2 weeks ago now? Obviously, yeah, we had the international break, but honestly, you lot to give us the jinx. Absolutely ruining me life. This week's going to turn the curse around, though. We're going to hammer Leicester tomorrow night.
Oh my God! If ever there was a mountain to climb, mate, to get yourself back on song, that is the mountain. Jeez.
It'll be the most Sunderland thing ever, though.
Yeah, probably.
It will be.
Let's face it, Dave. Predicting Newcastle wins easy these days. So.
Oh, here we go.
It's a home banker, lads. It's a home banker.
Particularly with all that Saudi cash supporting you. Yeah, absolutely.
It was incredible to see. Like, obviously, I predicted a 0-0, and then obviously we saw Gordon coming back, but. Yeah, obviously the previous matches between Newcastle and Crystal Palace have all been 0-0 draws, but Newcastle not showing any signs of that, and good to see Tonali getting a bit of a cameo towards the end after all the speculation as well, Stevie.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that was a safe bet though, wasn't it?
It was. Hey! He got a good reception, Tonali, by the lads and lasses at the match at the weekend, and for me, you know, rightly so. Interesting reports have coming out from his agent as well over the course of the last 24 hours to say that some of the stuff that's been linked to him in the press is untrue. But listen, good weekend for Newcastle, and obviously the Borough. Tough game for the Borough at the weekend, but another 3 points. Wayne Rooney going home with his tail between his legs.
Yep, it was an amazing performance by Carrick's men. It was a bit of a slog. We were battling it out for a good 80 minutes or so. Wayne Rooney's got a lot to do at Birmingham. I wasn't left very impressed with them. We can get into that as we get through the show, but
they were terrible. They were terrible.
They were very bad. Their passing was the worst I've ever seen from a club in a long time. But it was interesting as well. Obviously, the passing of Sir Bobby Charlton over the weekend, and having two ex-Man United players, both in Wayne Rooney and Michael Carrick, coming out after half-time after hearing the news. And it was a bit interesting just seeing those two there, and obviously the news of Sir Bobby. So. An amazing performance in the end by Middlesbrough. We controlled the game very well. Managed to get Morgan Rogers on to score the winning goal in the 87th minute. And tough team to break down. But my goodness, when they move the ball forward, they are woeful. They are one of the. He's got a lot of work to do. Does young Wayne. So but good to see Carrick getting one over his former mates. And it's a North East winning thing, isn't it, Ted? I mean, sorry, bud. Sorry.
Do you know what it is? I mean. I'm not going to be one of these who's going to come on the show every single time and slate referees.
Oh, here we go.
No. There's no hiding from it. We were rubbish on Saturday. We really were, especially in that last third. That sort of slick passing, and Rye, you know what Sunderland are capable of in terms of that attacking and popping the ball around the box and just waiting patiently for that chance. There was none of that there on Saturday. And there's a little bit of unrest about that because it just seemed to lack any sort of cutting edge whatsoever. That being said, we absolutely got turned over by more disgraceful refereeing. I mean, it was an absolute blatant handball that led to the first goal. And then, there was a Stonewall penalty on Jack Clark as well. But that being said, the team were not at the races and they've really got a lot of work to do. I expect to see actually a few changes tomorrow night out of that squad because Paddy Roberts, for one, just didn't look interested.
Wow,
he had that side to him at the Riverside as well. He could be a world beater one game and then go missing completely in the next. I mean,
he did. Yeah.
Do you know what it is, Dave? Since that transfer speculation about at the same time that Loch Ness Drogba went away with his mashed potato ankles. Good riddance. But Paddy Roberts was obviously subject to like a £5 million bid as well, apparently. And he just hasn't looked the same since that transfer window's closed. And I don't know whether he's had his head turned, or whether he's just biding time to get away. But honestly, Barr has been more impressive to watch than what Roberts has lately. It didn't help that Mogger went and played Roberts through the centre as well, because I don't think that's his game at all.
It's actually interesting to have you on, Ted, and it's good to have a Mackem on. We got you all week as well, so we got
you don't mean
we got
that.
you through the
we do, mate. We love you. We do.
But because it's good. We got to talk Sunderland as much as we can, because we've got a Newcastle Borough dominant show since while you've been away, mate. But because leading into that end of that transfer window, Steve and I and Dave were sitting there going, "What is happening?" Because the night before, you didn't have a striker. You had Roberts speculation. You had Jack Clark speculation. You obviously had Ross Stewart, who was ending up going to Southampton. You had all these players that just didn't want to be there. You had, by the sounds of it, and then obviously you turned it around. You ended up holding on to Roberts, Jack Clark as well. And then obviously you had Danny Bath leave as well. So it was this weird sort of, where we're going to get the goals from. Then you end up getting Rooson in, who hasn't really hit the ground running. And you've sort of I don't know, you had Mogger seemed to still for those next few games, get the boys up and running and turn it around. But then Middlesbrough, obviously, a 4-0 defeat. And then obviously you've lost to Stoke and Alex Neil, two of your most arch nemesis, if you will. But are you worried about the club at the moment, or do you think it's just a little bit of a dip and that goals can still come back? Because what we've seen with Jack Clark, he's dropped off a little bit in the past couple of games after getting Player of the Month. Maybe that's the curse as well. And then obviously you were saying about Roberts having his head turned. Do you think any of the other boys' heads are turned, or is it just literally just a classic dip in form for the past couple of games?
I think it is a dip. I think, I don't want to read too much into it. At the end of the day, it's two defeats on the bounce. You look how quickly you can turn that round. Borough's a great example of that, where, your start of the season was pretty poor. Then all of a sudden you've got 5 on the bounce in terms of wins. So that form can turn around very quickly. What concerns me, though, is the next 2 games that we've got, which is Leicester and Norwich. And they're not the teams really where you want to turn your form around.
Huge games coming up, isn't it? That's the thing. But the championships like that, I mean, I know, obviously we've been down there in recent years, and if you don't put a run together, lads, then things start to look, doom and gloom. But then suddenly you find that winning formula, and 4 or 5 games, and you're back up the table, and you're both capable of doing it. I just think Sunderland's going through that little blip. I genuinely thought Sunderland would get something at Stoke. I thought that Sunderland would have turned it round. I thought it would have been a bit of a blessing in disguise. Sometimes you do find out more about your players when you get a defeat, especially if it's in a derby game. But unfortunately for Sunderland, they didn't manage to achieve it at the weekend. You've just got to dust yourself down, because the games come thick and fast. And you can change it. You just said, look at what's happened with Borough. Borough looked all doom and gloom. Rye wasn't in a great place at the start of the season. Nope. Couldn't. Well, in fact, it was just one of those things. You just got on that bad run, but then bang, you get a result, you turn it round, and suddenly everything in the star looks brighter. So I think you'll do it, Ted.
I still think though that. Sorry, I agree. I just think Mowbray now needs to pick a striker and start and play them, because you go away to Stoke, where we are expected to win. Stoke are in poor form. Really, that should have been the game where we beat Stoke and Alex Neil gets sacked. That was the plan for the Sunderland fans anyway. But you go down there, and I'm stealing the headlines a little bit for later on. But you go there with 3 strikers on the bench and start with Patrick Roberts up front against Stoke. Now, Stoke aren't exactly known for their footballing finesse. They're not exactly going to play it out the back with 5'4" centre backs. They're a physical big team. Playing a false 9 against them was never going to work. They worked us out in the last third. And they basically played like they didn't want to get beat. I mean, the rest of the game was absolutely shocking. Stoke was Stoke. They just did Stoke things. Every time it looked like getting a bit of a break on the go, it was pulling people down. The referee didn't help things at all with that as well. It just didn't get stamped out. Zero consistency as usual.
You're painting pictures already in my mind. I'm Stoke was Stoke. They did Stoke things. It's like they get the ball on the halfway line, open the kiln and put some pots in, and then close the door and carry on playing. It's painting pictures, Ted. Yeah. Painting pictures.
Yes, it is. Yeah, they were shocking to watch. They're just Luton Town in a bonny strip.
Hey, they got a 2-2 draw the weekend.
You don't need to bring yourself down to our level, Stevie. I mean, Newcastle were absolutely fantastic. 4-0, mate. Jacob Murphy, man of the match for me. I obviously watched it. Kieran Trippier as well in fine form, but no signs of slowing down for Newcastle. As you've always said this year that you were worried about the Premier League, and they said that when you make Champions League, you worry about the league performances to go with it. Now off to Borussia in fine form, and my goodness, has Eddie Howe got the boys firing?
Hard pushed, really, to find a man of the match, mate, because the team performance was what it was all about. Newcastle had obviously identified a weakness down Crystal Palace's left-hand side, and they exploited it from the off. The policy that Eddie Howe had a season ago was to have down that right-hand side Kieran Trippier linking up with Miguel Almiron and Bruno in the middle. On Saturday, what we saw was exactly the same, but with a change of personnel. You had Kieran Trippier, who just seems to get better and better with each game this season, alongside Jacob Murphy, who was making his first Premier League start. He featured in the Champions League, of course, and Sean Longstaff. So we had exactly the same idea, the same principle, but with three completely different players. And for that first 20 minutes, Newcastle United really just, tore their left back a new one, and it just really should have been. Well, we should have been 2 or 3 goals up in the first 20 minutes, and we seem to be making a habit of that, which is great. Newcastle dominating early doors, getting ahead, and putting the team to sword, and ultimately there's no way back for teams at St James's Park when Newcastle do that. So for me, it was great. It was a great team performance. I think that Callum Wilson probably could have had a hat-trick before half time. He'll come off the pitch disappointed he only got the one. I think there has been a slight change, though. There's been a little tweak, because Newcastle's foundations were built on a solid defence last season, I think, and Newcastle, have still got that defensive tenacity, but they've now added goals to the game. And what's really pleasing is that it's not just coming from one or two people; it's coming from across the team. And Match of the Day did a wonderful graphic at the weekend. Newcastle are Premier League ranked first in goals. They've scored 24. Expected goals 19.89. Shots on target inside the box 46. Shot conversion rate is nearly 19%. Big chances scored 20 goals. Big chance conversion rate 52.6. So Newcastle are becoming a clinical team in front of goal, which I never ever thought I would say. So you know what, things are looking bright. As we know, in football things can change, but we seem to have had our mid-season blip at the start because the fixture list wasn't very kind to us, and now we're starting to really find our feet and find our form. So Wednesday night's game can't come quick enough. I think Newcastle will have a tougher opposition in Dortmund, as compared to what they had against PSG. Dortmund won 1-0 at the weekend, and are currently top of the Bundesliga, although the teams behind them have got a game in hand. But ultimately, this is a really good test. But by Wednesday night, if we can get a win, Newcastle could find themselves with 1 foot in the Champions League, and dare I say, in the title race, because like everybody else up there, they've got a fighter's chance. And if they can put a good run together, keep it going, there's no reason why Newcastle couldn't be in contention to upset the apple cart like Leicester did many years ago. So it's all to play for at the minute. It's a big month, but we're not getting you can't get too carried away. Like Eddie Howe says at his press conference, let's take one game at a time. Keep it one game at a time. And you mentioned Tonali, to get that response at the end of the game. Oh, yeah. He got a great reception when he came on, and then at the end, that he was notably very upset. The coaches, Graham Jones in particular, was comforting him as they did the walk around the pitch to thank the fans. But he couldn't help but be impressed by the love that he was shown. Eddie Howe asked for it, he got it in abundance. Let's see what this week brings. It's a big week for Tonali, it's a big week for Newcastle United as a football club. It was interesting as well to see that Amanda and Mirdad, obviously 2 of our owners, were actually in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia for the game. They weren't in Newcastle. Al Walid, who is our Saudi correspondent on NUFC Matters, got an exclusive interview with both of them. Yeah, interesting to see them out there. I wonder why they're out there. I think there's always question marks. Why weren't they at St James's Park? So more will come out about that, I'm sure. But yeah, loved it, Tonali, because he's got a big week ahead.
He has.
We've got to talk about quickly. Obviously, yeah, we do. We've got to talk about obviously how Eddie Howe's managed him and the response he had. Obviously, we weren't live after Eddie Howe's presser on Friday. I thought it was handled really well, but we have got to get some news headlines for all our three clubs, and then we can break down the weekend's results and get a bit more further into why Ted is the kiss of death.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, that's going to go down great with my family.
And on that note, I think we should start with Ted and Sunderland news.
Or should we?
Mackem's and Proud. Black Cats news.
Go on, mate.
Yes, so Black Cats gaffer Tony Mowbray has offered some explanation as to why Sunderland started Saturday's defeat to Stoke with no recognised strikers on the pitch despite having 3 on the bench. The Sunderland boss saw his preparation for the game disrupted by the fact that a number of his players, including on-loan Chelsea man Mason Burstow and fellow forward Nazari Rusin, were away representing their countries over the last fortnight, restricting the amount of time he could work with them. Sunderland face a bit of a selection dilemma in midfield tomorrow as Dan Neil returns to the squad after his controversial one-match ban that shouldn't have happened, following a red card in the game against Middlesbrough before the international break. This means the Black Cats boss has Pierre Ekwa back from injury, Joe Bellingham and Dan Neil all vying for space in the 2 holding berths in Mowbray's preferred lineup. And finally, staying with tomorrow night's fixture, the Foxes could be without 2 of their first choice wingers for the game. Leicester City are already without Casey McAteer after the winger was sidelined with a hamstring pull suffered a few weeks ago at Blackburn Rovers. But the East Midlands club now have a fresh concern after Turkish winger Yunus Akgun linked off during the weekend's match against Swansea. Foxes management are hopeful that the latter will pull through and be ready for the midweek clash.
Magpies and Proud. Mags News.
Okay, good morning Newcastle United fans. Happy new week. Newcastle returned from the international break to emphatically take down an Eagles side who'd shut them out in all 3 league and cup meetings last season. United ran out 4-0 winners with goals from Murphy, Gordon, Longstaff and Wilson, who went 3rd in the all-time goal scoring list behind Peter Beardsley and Alan Shearer. Reports in Italy state that federal prosecutor Giuseppe Shin will meet with lawyers acting for Sandro Tonali on Monday for what amounts to plea bargaining. An announcement confirming the player's punishment for involvement in illegal sports betting will then follow, with the expectation that it'll come before Newcastle's Champions League game on Wednesday. A blanket ban on him playing football for at least the remainder of the current season appears inevitable, and fears that a lengthier sanction could follow. Meanwhile, Tonali's agent Rizzo spoke out last night about the player. "You saw the reaction by Newcastle fans," he said. "Sandro will pay for his mistakes, but not for the things he didn't do. Someone started to condemn Tonali in the media without knowing the reality. I just hope the sanction will be correct," he told DAZN. And Newcastle's Premier League home meeting with Manchester United has been selected for live TV transmission by TNT Sports. The fixture will still be played on Saturday, December the 2nd, but now at the stupid time of 8 o'clock. That is your Newcastle headlines.
Smoggies and Proud. Borough News.
Good morning, Middlesbrough fans. How good are we? Hey, how good are we? Here are your Middlesbrough headlines for your fantastic Monday morning. Michael Carrick has spent much of his playing career in the shadow of Wayne Rooney and other English superstars, yet he might just eclipse them all as manager. While most of the focus here was on Wayne Rooney's first game in charge of Birmingham, including Carrick's own press conference, Carrick has eclipsed all his former teammates, now managers, as he continues to build an impressive reputation with his work at Middlesbrough. Borough were in a mess when Carrick replaced Chris Wilder a year ago to the date, and he promptly led them to the playoffs. And despite losing several key players over the summer and experiencing a poor start to this season, Carrick's men have now reeled off 5 wins, make it 6 on the bounce to move within 5 points of 3rd place. And Morgan Rogers' big winning goal for Middlesbrough against Birmingham on the weekend will give him a taste of providing big moments for the team that leads to him producing many more. His late goal after his introduction from the bench earned Borough a deserved win in a game where it looked like it would somehow not make their dominance pay. It left Carrick hoping it would prove a big moment for the summer signing from Manchester City. It's the second time in as many games that the 21-year-old has made an impact from the bench, and having previously spoken about how he is a student of the game who watches so much football to analyse and develop his own, he explained how he plays his part when it's on the bench and wanting to come on and make more of an impact off the bench. And also paying tribute to Charlton after Middlesbrough win over Birmingham City, obviously Sir Bobby Charlton, an emotional Carrick said, "I found out while walking down the channel as I was leaving the changing room at halftime. It was a strange few minutes, really. It was desperately sad and I was devastated to hear the news. In that moment then, looking over and seeing Wayne next to me, looking across to him, it was one of those moments really that was so difficult to describe. The game for that few minutes felt irrelevant as my mind flipped back to so many special moments that I shared with Sir Bobby Charlton. It was a bitterly sad day. He had an incredible journey, career and life, and he was humble enough to pass on his experiences to try and help support us when he didn't have to. I was greatly appreciative of him and his support at all the time." And finally, Middlesbrough FC women are unfortunately out of the Women's FA Cup after pushing Hull City all afternoon, but sadly losing at the losing end of a penalty shootout, losing 4 penalties to 2. That is your Borough headlines, your Borough news for this fantastic Monday morning as we go on to take on Norwich, and we take them right to the clinic.
Steve and Rye, the North East Footy Breakfast.
The Cat, the Tune and the Red.
Right, lads, we need to have a chat about Bobby Charlton. We lost a legend over the weekend. Not a Newcastle, not a Sunderland, and not a Borough legend. But Newcastle and Sunderland and Middlesbrough have all paid tributes, as every club has, over the weekend. And what a player! I thought one of the best tributes was on one of the Vox Pops that I saw when somebody came out and said the reason that somebody like Sir Bobby Charlton is so important is that we wouldn't have the likes of the Premier League now if it wasn't for the forefathers of the Premier League's game, and that's what Bobby Charlton was. Somebody who was who was prolific back in the day. Somebody who
100%.
Won the European Cup, but also won the World Cup for the country. Yeah. It's still the only World Cup we've ever won, and I think that's right. And I mean, Ted, I know you've listened to the show, but whenever people go on about Shearer's record, I'm always quick to point out that Alan Shearer, he's got a good goal scoring record, but he doesn't hold the all-time goal scoring record. Jimmy Greaves does, and there were players before the Premier League. It really irks me that life didn't start in football terms in 1992. Believe it or not, Newcastle and Sunderland actually won the league prior to 1992.
More than Chelsea.
And these kind of things are almost like written out of football because the Premier League is the be all and end all, and that irks me as a fan. And I don't know whether that's because I'm in my 50s. I'm a footballer of a football fan of a certain generation. But yeah, Bobby Charlton, what a player! And I grew up watching those goals like go in, like that wonderful strike from about 35 yards, which flies into the net like an Exocet missile. He was one of a kind. He was superb. I mean, Pop Robson played for Newcastle and Middlesbrough. Was another similar kind of player who could hit the ball with such ferocity. And goalkeepers didn't wear gloves in them days. It's a wonder it didn't take their hands off. But the tributes have been amazing. He's got a stand named after him. He was Manchester United through and through. And I tell you what as well, back in the days when mental health wasn't even heard of, the biggest praise I can give Bobby Charlton, is that he had to carry that grief after being on the Munich air disaster throughout his life. He must have lived with that grief of why me? Why did I survive? Well, I'll tell you why you survived, Bobby, because you were a wonderful ambassador for the North East. You're a wonderful ambassador for Manchester United. You're a wonderful ambassador for your country. And, that's why you survived, because you carried on and managed to achieve the dreams that those lost teammates, couldn't. And, it's a sad, sad loss for British football, lads.
You talk about,
really
I mean, we always talk about his goal scoring antics, which were just phenomenal. I mean, let's not forget this guy scored, what was it, 48, 49 goals at a time when you didn't play against the likes of Andorra and San Marino. You know what I mean? He did it against absolute world-class opposition. But putting his goal scoring to one side for a second, something I read just this morning, which I thought was incredible, and I never knew this. So he actually made his debut for Man United in 1956, and he ended his career in the mid-70s. So it was an almost 20-year career of playing at the highest level as well. In that time, Charlton was never sent off and picked up only 2 bookings in his career.
Wow.
That's phenomenal. That's a gentleman.
Incredible. Yeah, that is. I mean, 606 appearances for Man United in total, 199 goals scored, obviously from 1956 to 1973. And then he had a bit of a run at Preston North End as well. But what an incredible figure in English football. And whenever you talk about Man United, you're not far away from talking about Charlton and what he did. And we just were talking last week about the David Beckham documentary and how much that was, a good watch, even though we didn't really know much about Beckham, and to see his connection with Sir Bobby and that. And you can't really go into Man United as a youngster or as anyone without knowing the influence. And he was still there on match days, and unfortunately, just a part of life, isn't it? When we just lose an amazing figure of our game, and just makes you appreciate the time that you've had watching someone of that quality back in the day. And sad moment, but it was incredible for me, obviously watching the Middlesbrough game and seeing Michael Carrick and Wayne Rooney. I mean, Michael Carrick was in tears. Michael Carrick spoke in length post-match about how much Sir Bobby would come down to the change rooms when he was a player, and how much
fellow Geordie, wasn't he?
How much of an influence he would have had on Michael and Wayne's careers, and to see them two standing there now as managers, one Birmingham, one Middlesbrough, and to see both of them standing there clapping, both probably having reflections of moments with under Sir Bobby, and it was incredible, and it just made it a bit more special for me to be able to appreciate how much of influence he had on those two young men. Well, now leaders of our clubs. So incredible, and what an incredible tribute across the nation for him, and we lost a good one.
I thought it was a fitting sort of display as well that Man United actually scored a winner with an absolute beauty of an outside the box finish as well. It just seemed to be like it was a bit of Bobby Charlton in the boots for Dallo there. It was an exquisite kind of finish that, and I'm sure he would have been very proud and cheering that wherever he is now. He's obviously gone on, but he did actually play. I know we got to talk about it as well. He's got to talk. He did play one game for an Australian club, lads. He played for one game for Newcastle KB United. They're not obviously around anymore, but in 1977, the first Newcastle team based to play in the Newcastle National League. We do have a Newcastle here in Australia, by the way. Not to confuse you over there, but we do have a Newcastle. A lot of our towns here in Australia are named after English towns. We're lazy like that, I want to say, as Australians. Quite right. We just sort of, we're like, what's that, Newcastle? Yeah, we'll name that Newcastle. Cardiff? Yep, Cardiff can be next to Newcastle. It makes sense. Kind of like named
that,
after all the prisons.
Wrexham, exactly, but kind of like that Wrexham map. Australia was kind of like, yeah, that'll do. So Bobby did play one game for Newcastle KB United in the National Soccer League here in 1977. So, a little bit of a touch of Australia there. But, look, a sad weekend overall to lose the legend of game. It's never easy, do you know what I mean? And there'll be so many tributes and so many people that he's, been around and affected during his lifetime. And, interesting, like you said, Ted, to see Man United get that win. I mean, it was a tough old slog against Sheffield United. I thought they weren't going to get it done for a second there, but look, it was incredible to see, and massive tribute from the Northeast Brekkie Show to Sir Bobby Charlton and all the loved ones and family.
We're going to have some ads, Dave.
We're going to do that. We're going to do some sport as well. We'll continue to chat, and we've got we still got to dive head first into the performances from the weekend as well. So Ted's really looking forward to doing that one. We'll do it all next across the Northeast. Right here on the Count, the Red and the Tune.
Steve and Rye, the Northeast Footy Breakfast.
Right across the Northeast, the Red the count and the tune.
And I was just going to say, we'll get a new set of jingles made with Ted in it, but he's dropped off, he's run away, he's gone. He's gone. I shouldn't have mentioned...
We were going to talk about those performances, and then all of a sudden his internet drops out. Hey, how convenient is that?
It was a bit like Higgy on the Three Legends when Borough were going through that run. He just, every time we came to him, he was like, "Oh, there's somebody at the door, fellas. I'll be back in 20 minutes."
I remember, having good long breakfast shows about gardening back in that era as well.
Yes,
so
indeed.
Yeah, good to put it all behind us. But what a performance on the weekend. We can start with the Borough, because what an incredible performance it was. Yeah, Birmingham though, I'm not sure if you saw the game, Steve. Obviously Newcastle were on at the same time, but Birmingham were shocking. Like their passing was so incredibly woeful. I've never seen it. So Birmingham were a team that liked to play out from the back, from what I can understand. Obviously Wayne Rooney, Ashley Cole, they got a brand new management team in there. We saw Wayne Rooney in a tracksuit, wearing the hat as well, because I think he's balding. I think that's what we're trying to cover up, Wayne. I'm on to you, mate. I'm watching you. But and what I saw was
he had a hair
Birmingham
transplant, didn't he?
He did, yeah. He had a hair transplant.
I think he did, yeah. I think he did, but he still wears a hat. So it's interesting to see Birmingham trying to play it out from the back, because they just don't have the team or had the skill set to do it. They were passing from, obviously Sanderson, their captain in the centre back, was trying to use Dembele and a few other avenues, but they just could not hit their targets. And Middlesbrough, all credit again to Hayden Hackney, Dan Barlaser in that centre midfield. They were cutting off every pass or putting pressure on. Josh Coburn, who missed a couple of good chances, mind you, unfortunately getting a bit of slack on the Middlesbrough. We always need a scapegoat, don't we, Borough fans, I tell you. But I reckon Joshy put in a good shift. He did miss a couple of easy chances. We should have really been 2, maybe 3 up at half-time. We're a bit worried that all these chances, we made Ruddy, the goalkeeper for Birmingham, look like the best goalkeeper in the world. I mean, this man was a superstar keeping out all these shots from Middlesbrough. And obviously we had a few chances spurned as well by missing the goal, going over and to the right. And Joshy Coburn, as I said, should have had a couple more. But we looked at team possessed in that second half. Carrick's halftime speech, and again, it would have been affected by that Sir Bobby Charlton news as well. Michael Carrick was in tears, like I said, as we came out from halftime. We had a minute applause for him, and he was crying. Carrick was in tears. So to see him still get the team up and make some substitutions while his mind was probably elsewhere was incredible. And we saw Morgan Rogers come on once again. He came on against Sunderland in the second half. He's come on again against Birmingham, and he was the difference. We had Crooksy, who is in absolutely renewed form, by the way, Matty Crooks. The tree is incredible. Don't know what has happened to him in the off-season, but he is a man possessed. And we obviously still had no Riley McGree. We still had no Darragh Lenihan, who seems to be a big question mark around there. And I want to put it out to the fellow fans as well. And we'll get the WhatsApp number to you guys out there as well, to try and get in and get some news about what's happened to Darragh Lenihan, because he's gone missing. The news was that he'd gone out with an illness, and something had happened with some sort of illness going around, around the area. But and it was affected Johnny Harson. But we haven't seen Darragh Lenihan now for the good part of 3-4 games. So if you do know what's going on, and you've got some question, Borough fans, around Darragh Lenihan, get in touch with us on the WhatsApp. 0330 043 2002. That is 0330 043 2002. And I'm not extending that just to Borough fans. If you're a Newcastle fan or a worried Sunderland fan, get in touch with the show. We'd love to hear from you. But yeah, Darragh Lenihan, that was another one that was weirdly out for us on the weekend. But we had a great second half performance, a great turnaround through Morgan Rogers. We managed to hold on for 8 minutes of extra time. The refereeing as well, there was a bit of commenting around there. We had Rachel Welch, a female referee, born in Sunderland, lads. Born in Sunderland, and she's managing the Borough. So, no, I actually thought she officiated quite well. I didn't have any complaints there. I thought she actually handled the game well. There was a few contentious issues with a bit of back chatting and stuff like that. But, yeah, to have a Sunderland-born referee managing the Borough, you can't do that. But overall, great performance, another 3 points. Carrick's men are up and about. We're off to the Champions League soon as well. Carabao Cup, I get them confused all the time. Steve, I apologise. We're just that good at the moment. I feel like we're in the Champions League. And Middlesbrough just can't be stopped at the moment. We really can't. And I'm just so excited for each game day to see what's going to come out, because the depth of our squad, the team that he's picking is just clicking. We've still got no Riley McGree. We've still got no Darragh Lenihan. Johnny Howson is still obviously the 35-year-old whiz kid that's coming off the bench now. It's incredible the squad depth that this Carrick's got, and I'm just so happy to be a Borough fan at the moment, lads.
I'll tell you what, mate, you're saying about this run and it continuing. I've got a horrible feeling about Norwich midweek, but then we'll come back to that one. I'm pleased to say Ted has dusted down all his connections, and he's back with it. Oh, hang on, he's gone again.
Oh, welcome back,
I'm here.
He's there. Oh, you're looking
Sorry about it. I'm still here.
You're looking a bit grey on that screen here. Something's going on. There's some gremlins in there. Maybe it's that Sunderland-based referee. That's
Yeah, well, it's only right. I mean, Middlesbrough brought their own referee to the game when we played them, so...
It was Rise, mate. It was the Aussie, wasn't it? It was Rise, mate.
He was.
I'm sure.
I spoke to him last... We sipped to Foster's last night together. Did we laughing at the weekend results? Him and me go way back. But Ted, while we got you before you run away
sipping
again...
Fosters. Oh, my God. I tell you, you're tasting beers like you're tasting football teams, right?
Before your connection drops out, and I'm doing air quotes here, can you talk to us about that Sunderland result, what you saw? I know we've gone over it a little bit, but try and break it down. What's gone wrong? Are you missing Dan Neil specifically? Is it something that that can change midweek? I mean, obviously Leicester are absolutely flying at the moment.
Yeah, the thing is with Dan Neil, and I've actually been quite critical of him in the past. I write for the fans page on Facebook and all that sort of thing, and I can be critical of Dan Neil. That's not because I don't want him to succeed. It's because I think he can do things better. However, I think this season, particularly, Dan Neil has been a much improved player than what he was last season. Barring the sending off, which was it never should have happened, but he did put himself in that position. Dan Neil is one of these players. Back when we first moved to the Stadium of Light, we had a fantastic midfielder called Stefan Schwarz. Used to play for Arsenal, Fiorentina, Swedish international. Bit of a Rolls Royce of a central midfielder.
Remember him well.
The thing is, Dave, a great player, and it was one of these where you always noticed when he wasn't playing, and that's a big thing for me as a midfielder. Is that little bit of creativity, or that little bit of being able to put the foot on the ball and actually dictate the game a little bit. That was most definitely missing against Stoke. Ekwa's just come back from an injury, so we can't really single him out. To be fair, I thought Ekwa was the best player on the pitch, considering the length of time he's been out. So he got 75 minutes under his belt, and he'll get better as time goes on. I think he'll certainly be in contention for a starting place tomorrow night. But Dan Neil, yes, almost certainly we've missed out. He's got a goal in him. He's got that little bit of needle. He's got that little bit of bite. And that's not to say that Joe Bellingham doesn't have that. I think he's developing it. But I think maybe a little bit of a reshuffle. Dan Neil back in the side alongside Ekwa, just to kind of shore up in front of that central defence. I think that will help matters. I'm not going to be very popular for what I'm going to say next, because Luke O'Nien is not a centre-back. Again, it was one of those where he just seemed to get picked out a little bit. Their first goal was a handball, but there was just that little bit of sloppy play at the back where he makes me nervous as a centre-back. I grew up in the days where the likes of Paul Butler, people have like legs like tree trunks and absolute giants of people. I just don't see Luke O'Nien as a centre back. Lovely guy, Mr. Sunderland and all that, but so Samson the cat, he's lovely as well, and he's not a centre back either. And I do honestly think that needs to be looked at. I think selling Danny Batt was a mistake. Without a shadow of a doubt. I think we need a physical presence, somebody who can, just play with that little bit of experience and shore things up a little bit, because, bearing in mind we've got a young goalkeeper. Patterson looked shaky as well a little bit at times, for only a couple of decent saves, but when he dribbles the ball or he lets it run past his body as a goalkeeper and it's in the 6-yard box, honestly, my heart's in my mouth. I kind of take that. I'm 44 and I'm a bit fat, that's bad for me health. A bit fat. There's people who know me listening to this going, really? A bit.
It's all right,
economical to the truth. Yeah, it's exactly. I've got a face for it anyway.
It's a great waistline for radio. I've got one myself.
But yeah, the rest of the performance. I mean, I've already spoken about the referee. He was absolutely diabolical. Absolutely dire. There's no way on earth you could miss that handball leading up the first goal. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And whether we're going to get VAR in the in the coming seasons in the Championship, I mean, hopefully we're not even there. But we might have to just put up with it.
I'm just giggling because you've got all this lot in the Premier League whinging about having VAR, and we're whinging about not having it in the Championship.
Well, I'm sure we'll come to that later, but VAR didn't exactly come to the rescue of a few teams in the Premier League at the weekend. But yeah, that's by the by. But yeah, like I said right at the top of the show, the thing for me was in the last third of the pitch, things just didn't click together. Abdullah Bar had a great chance when it was 1-1 to actually put us ahead and hit the side net, and when he really needed to do a lot better than that. He had acres of space. I don't know why he tried to be clever and beat the keeper at the near post. You always put it across to the other side, the big side of the goal, hoping that if the keeper does save it, then it comes out to somebody. A bit like how Jack Clark got his goal in that game as well. So a little bit of inexperience from Bar there, but the one who I've been watching lately, and I do not doubt this guy's talent whatsoever. Alex Pritchard is a good little player. He's a great technical player. For me, he doesn't score as many goals as I would like him to, especially playing in that sort of almost that number 10 role. But he just seemed to moan at everybody the whole time on the pitch. Now, you look at somebody like Bradley Dack, who plays in a very, very similar position, similar type of player, small, compact, technical player. Bradley Dack, he sort of, he directs play a little bit like the way Paul Scholes used to, pointing to where he wants the ball to be played or where he's going to play the ball, and sort of cajoling players into an attacking unit. Pritchard in that game just seemed to moan the whole time, and he was doing the same against Borough as well. All right, it was tough because it was against we were with 10 men, but he just seemed to I don't know. He just seemed to bring the mood down a little bit. They didn't play with that sort of same freedom. He's another one. You stick him in that Patrick Roberts category where it was mooted that he could be in line for a move away. Now. Obviously, you don't want to see your best players go, and he is one of our best players, but he just needs to, lose the attitude a little bit, It's, I'm not expecting everyone to play around like grinning idiots, like the Joker out of Batman, but at the same time, he just needs to play with a little bit more freedom, I think. And I think it will click again, but we've got to sort this striker situation out and actually start and play it with strikers up front. I mean, poor Hemi is being used as like sort of a last 10-minute substitute. That must be absolutely crucifying his confidence. And then you've got the likes of Bruce in as well.
Obviously taking on Leicester now. Your game couldn't get much harder in your next fixture. Obviously, Leicester are expecting to break the championship record for points this season. So, it's at home for you, but it's going to be a tough old slog against Leicester. I mean, I as an ex-Middlesbrough man, I think we saw the start of the season that you could have. Do you know what I mean? And obviously, the opponents never get easier. But I think at home and that it'll be interesting to see what you can actually do against the likes of Leicester and whether that does make the younger players step up a bit more. But
Ted, do you think there's more pressure? Do you think there's more pressure playing at home?
Good football.
Do you think there's more pressure,
Steve?
Do you think that because like back in the with Newcastle, I found when we were certainly in the Championship, when you're trying to get out of that division, it's such a difficult division. But a lot of people talk about having 45,000 fans at home, and it's like having the 12th man. But we with our crowds in the Championship, it was sometimes that extra pressure that just players couldn't cope with, and it becomes easier to play on the road.
It's the longer it goes without scoring a goal first, the more sort of difficult it becomes. And as much as I love the stadium I like for the atmosphere and all that sort of thing, if there's no goal after about 20 minutes, it just starts to kind of get a little bit nervy and a little bit quiet. And this is why I'm saying, like, playing against somebody like Leicester actually suits us, because Leicester play football. if you play against the Cardiffs and, dare I say it, the Middlesbroughs of this world who come up and set up not to get beat,
What?
Then
What? We battered you in the first 15, 20 minutes of that game.
Then you get beat 4-0.
Yeah, of course, because you brought the referee along with you and you kid bags.
That's right.
But no, all joking aside.
I'll see you at dinner tonight, by the way.
So yeah, I mean, I'm all joking aside. Yeah, the Borough game was a bit of a freak show anyway. But the likes of Cardiff, the likes of Stoke, the set up not to get beat against us, and that doesn't suit us.
Are you confident at all that you could get something against Leicester? Like, is there actually any confidence there? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, as much as it was a very, very poor show, and I was, Mrs. Ted was absolutely sick of me hurling abuse at the screen as I was watching the game, because everybody had an off day. I would say, bar probably Bellingham, who tired towards the end, and Ekwah were fantastic. Even Jack Clark was way, way below the performance levels that's capable of from him. Yep. So it was frustrating, but I think good time to bounce back. Let's go. Let's make a statement. Let's go and play football against the top of the league, and let's go and get 3 points.
Yeah, no, it'll be a great, tantalising fixture, I think, and obviously, I think someone's got to get on into Leicester and be able to break them down. We saw shocking results for Leicester last season, so but I think their management style and obviously Jamie Vardy, Ian Archer, and their players are just too good for the championship. So yeah, but it'll be interesting to see how Luke O'Nien goes against the Jamie Vardy or an Ian Archer as well. Obviously, you were critical of how he goes, and I used to like Luke O'Nien. I was a bit of a fan of Wycombe Wanderers when they were under Gareth Ainsworth. And
Michael Bolton,
he was literally, but he was a midfielder here. So it's interesting to see how Luke O'Nien is being moved into that centre back role, but obviously Mogga knows football more than I do, so
I love him. I really do love him, because I mean, what he brings to that side is this, like, sort of, he'll do anything. He'll go up front if he's asked to. He'll go in goal if you wanted him to. He's just got that 100% enthusiasm. He's like an excitable cocker spaniel. He's just like he's that sort of player. He just runs around like a loony. And I love that about him. I would never want to change that about him. I just have question marks about his suitability at centre back. Maybe if we played 3 centre backs and he was on the one of the ends of those of a back 3, maybe that would work. But as it stands at the minute, I think it's an accident waiting to happen, and somebody with the experience of Jamie Vardy must be looking at that going, I'm going to torture you.
It will be an interesting watch, and we've got to talk about, obviously, struggling Newcastle United in the Premier League. I mean, they're having just an absolute woeful run at the moment. These Newcastle United, I mean, Champions League, they just beat, Paris Saint-Germain. You only just beat Crystal Palace on the weekend, Roy Hodgson's side. You must be quite worried up there, Steve.
Really worried. Storm Jacob hit Tyneside at the weekend. Never mind Storm Babette. I mean, you picked out Jacob Murphy.
He was incredible, mate. He was incredible.
And he plays with a smile on his face. I mean, Miggy Almiron's done the same on that right-hand side.
Yeah.
But Jacob Murphy, he likes a wind-up as well. I mean, he was coming off the pitch at the end of the game.
I saw that.
Did the old 1, 2, 3, 4 goals and looked at his hand. But he's got a bit of he's got a bit of a reputation for that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, look, I mentioned at the start of the show, it was a wonderful, wonderful performance from Newcastle, who, it has to be said, didn't really get out of first gear most of the game. And that's against a team that really will cause lots of teams problems.
Yeah.
I mean, Palace didn't play badly. Newcastle just played well enough to stick 4 goals past them, and it was as simple as that. There was, goals shared round again. I mean, for me, it was good to see Joe Linton, get minutes under his belt. He wasn't the Joe Linton who we know he can be. He probably needs another game or 2 to get back to where he was. But Anthony Gordon is just literally on fire at the moment.
Oh, he's incredible.
Great strike, great player.
He's incredible.
Congratulations to him on becoming a dad as well for the first time. But there's been lots of images shown, of Anthony Gordon, at Everton just before he left, and Anthony Gordon now, and he looks about 5 years younger.
Yeah.
But I've mentioned it on the show before. I remember being down at Goodison under the management of Steve Bruce, and Newcastle lost the game 1-0. and Anthony Gordon came on as a substitute, and he completely changed the game. And I remember watching him thinking he's the kind of player that you'd want in your team. He's like a Dennis Wise, he's like a David Speedy. He's constantly in and around here and causing absolute mayhem for the midfield and the back four. And all he needed to do was to get Eddie Howe fit, as we call it on Tyneside, which seems to be a step above everybody else's fit, but also learn how to put the ball in the back of the net. And that European tournament that he played for England in the summer gave him some continuity, gave him a chance to continue the form that he'd found at the end of the season. And then he came straight back into pre-season. He was top of all the charts for Eddie in fitness, etc., which is no wonder because he didn't have a break, and he's reaped the benefits. He really has, and he's been a star man. And I think for us as well, we know that he's got that little bit of feistiness in him. He's going to pick up bookings, but he's already served his first suspension of the season, so he's got a little bit of leeway now, hopefully. But yeah, he was the standout man for me. Gordon. Kieran Trippier just goes from strength to strength. We cannot emphasise how important a signing he was for Eddie Howe when he came to the club, and he clearly is leading by example in the dressing room, but he leads by example on the pitch, and he's really pushing this team towards hopefully its first bit of silverware. I'd love to see him captain the team to get to that. Again, Lascelles, somebody who at times, Newcastle fans have, ridiculed on social media, who, criticised heavily. Wouldn't be anybody's first choice in that centre-half role. But, we know Sven Botman's on the road to recovery, but Eddie Howe didn't even name him on the bench at the weekend because he was that confident that Lascelles would do the job, and he duly has. And, credit to Jamal Lascelles for standing up and being counted in a tough run of fixtures. And, we haven't missed Sven Botman is the biggest compliment you can pay to him. And, it gives us the opportunity to be able to bring him in when he's fully fit. I think we've touched on the Tonali situation. I want to talk about Wilson. Callum Wilson is probably somebody who Newcastle fans certainly nowadays have love and respect for. But I think when you heard the statistic at the weekend that he's actually now third in the all-time Newcastle United goal scoring list, I think there was a few raised eyebrows. He's quietly gone about his business and got to that position over the course of the last couple of seasons, and he's now ahead of some names such as like Les Ferdinand, Andy Cole. He's now third in the list behind Peter Beardsley and Alan Shearer, and that's it. I don't think Newcastle fans realise what we've been watching until now, and he's only it won't take him long to surpass Peter Beardsley. He's going to be number 2. He's going to be our second greatest number 9 of all time. In goal scoring terms. So from our perspective, that in itself is great, because we've got him, we've got Isak as well, who managed to come on and he's obviously been out injured, get an opportunity to come on and get himself in contention for the game on Wednesday night. But all in all, a really good weekend for Newcastle. And a good weekend for us and a good weekend for Borough as well, right?
Yep, certainly is. It's great to be a North East fan at the moment. Sorry, Ted. And we are just absolutely fine. I just want to ask before we get into the news at 8 o'clock.
Just before you do, you were asking about Lenihan earlier. We've had a WhatsApp come into the studio. There's no name attached. It's just a letter T. So thanks, T, for sending us in. If you're going to send us a WhatsApp, at least tell us who you are and where you're sending it in from. Then we can be a little bit more personal with it, can't we? It's Steve from Stockton or whatever. Right, Lenihan was at the game. His girlfriend posted photos of him being there on Instagram. So hopefully just an illness or a small injury. So hopefully just a precaution. There you go. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much,
The joys
T,
of social media.
Indeed. I appreciate you. I appreciate you, Riley McGree T. Thank you for tuning in, mate. As always, I love you.
So come on, Riley, let's hear about Borough. Let's hear about the Borough before we go in the news. Give us a lowdown on what is going right at Middlesbrough and about an injury that you sustained.
Yeah. I mean, you
must have been jumping up and down. You must have been jumping up and down, right?
It wasn't me. It was Christian Bielik, who copped an absolute fizzer to the manhood, boys. And I don't know if you lads have have experienced it to that level, but obviously we've all been as boys had one into the nether region at some point in our life. And my goodness, Christian Bielik, I know you're an avid listener of the show, mate. I know you'll be sitting there with an ice pack on the boys, and I'm thinking of you, not so much the boys, just you as a person, because I know how much that would have hurt, mate.
I'm so glad you clarified that.
I was grimacing for you, mate, because the Marcus Force, who is the right winger for Middlesbrough, has gotten onto a ball. He's tried to latch one on from about 40 yards out, and all that was standing in his way was Christian Bielik and his potential fatherhood. And it is unfortunately gone so smack bang into that area that Christian Bielik, I mean, everyone at the Riverside said that was just, the PA was loud.
There was a collective
scream was louder. It was incredibly bang on where you don't want it to be. And yeah, look, I'm still grimacing. I'm grabbing right now, thinking of it, how much pain he would have been in, because holy magoli, was that a fizzer and shot straight into
the funniest thing, mate. The funniest thing for me was it was a female referee. And you can imagine the conversation. Karen, she comes over to check he's okay. Come on, get back to your feet. And he would have just looked at her and went, "You've no idea, ref. You've no idea."
The poor boy was out for about a good 5 minutes after that. He didn't want to go near the football. And he had tears streaming down his face. It was a fizzer of a shot right in there. I haven't seen one like that in years, and I tell you, I never want to as well. It was almost made the
problem is as well, lads, when it comes towards you, it's a natural instinct to go back over. So when you go back over, that means that the ball's got further to travel and build up more momentum. So it's I mean, we've all been there, lads. It's not a nice thing.
It isn't. I looked at the replay, Ryan. Honestly, I mean, it must be an absolute casserole down there. The way that hit it, jeez, it was just horrible to watch. Absolutely horrible to watch.
Yeah, I reckon, we've seen Lewis O'Brien go in for surgery and he needs 2 to 3 months out. Christian Bielik, if you want to take the next 12 months off, we all understand, mate. Honestly, you can take the year off and we will all understand why you're recovering and why you can't play, mate, because you take as much time as you need over there at Birmingham, and Wayne Rooney, you make sure you look after him, because holy bajoli, mate, Christian Bielik he's in a lot of pain today.
Not the multi-ball system he was hoping for.
No, not at all.
Yeah, all the jokes can come out now, can't they? He's gonna take up farming, because now he's got a couple of big acres. Yeah, okay, dear doctor. It's time for the news, fellas. It is a North East Footy Breakfast show. We're talking about all kinds of things, including hitting ball at the Riverside at the weekend. We will be back with more chat and banter with Ted. Good to have you with us, Ted. After this, what a song! What a song!
Love it.
I was sitting here absolutely in awe, just head banging. And I do have to apologise to the listeners. I got it wrong. Sunderland are actually away to Leicester. It's back-to-back away games for the Mackems, and I apologise
to Ted.
I apologise to Ted. I apologise to the Mackems. But I tell you what, I don't apologise for. How good the Borough are! Good morning, everybody.
He definitely takes something before he gets on this show. I'm telling you.
It's too much.
I tell you what, I take one of Michael Carrick's cardigans, I put it on like a warm blanket, I get my coffee, and I sit down and I embrace the life of a Borough fan and all this town and everything it has to offer. It's like, it's like Mogger's chocolates warming in my pocket.
I tell you what,
it's incredible.
Tell you what, right? It's a beautiful sight out of the window. The sun is rising over the Eastern Alps, mate. It's tremendous.
Steve Gibson, I know we talk a lot, mate, and I know we have lots of Zoom calls. I need that jet, mate. I need that jet. And I know you're working on it, but make it quicker, please, Stevie. I miss you, and I need to get back over there. But we have got some, get back into the headlines as we kick off your 8 o'clock. We've got a lot more to talk about. We've obviously got the sad passing of Sir Bobby Charlton over the weekend. We've also got to talk about, lads, that bit of Man City disrespect as well. Bit of towards Sir Bobby Charlton.
Was it?
And a bit of disgusting news coming out of there. So, offensive chants and bottles thrown during the Merseyside derby as well. So we've got to talk about hooliganism in the next hour. But let's start off with the team's headlines.
Which one are we going to start with?
Come down to the Borough because it's a happy place.
Smoggies and Proud. Borough News.
Good morning, you beautiful Middlesbrough fans. How are we this fine, fantastic morning? Oh, Michael Carrick is up and about, and I bet you are too, because Michael Carrick has spent much of his playing career in the shadow of Wayne Rooney and other England superstars, yet he might just eclipse them all as manager. While most of the focus here on the weekend was Rooney's first game in charge of Birmingham, including during Michael Carrick's own press conference where he was constantly questioned about Wayne Rooney and his friendship there, Carrick might go on to eclipse all of his former teammates who have now become managers as he continues to build on this impressive reputation with his work at Middlesbrough. Borough were a mess when Carrick replaced Chris Wilder a year ago, and he promptly led them now to the playoffs last season. And despite losing several key players over this summer and experiencing a poor start to the season, Carrick's men have now reeled off 5 wins on the bounce to move within 5 points of third place. And Morgan Rogers gets all the credit from the big winning goal for Middlesbrough against Birmingham City on the weekend. And it will give him a taste to providing big moments for the team as he leads him to hopefully producing a lot more. His late goal after his introduction from the bench earned Borough the deserved win on the weekend, where it looked like the game would somehow not make their dominance pay. It left Carrick hoping it would prove a big moment for the summer signing from Man City. It's the second time in as many games that the 21-year-old has made an impact from the bench and has previously spoken about how he is still a student of the game. He watches so much football to analyse and develop his own game, and he explained how that plays its part when he's either on the bench or starting in the starting 11. He just wants to make an impact for his club. And paying tribute to Charlton, Sir Bobby Charlton, after Middlesbrough's win over Birmingham City, an emotional Michael Carrick said that he found out walking down the channel as I was leaving the changing room at halftime. It was a strange few minutes, really, said Michael Carrick. I was desperately sad and I was devastated to hear the news. In that moment, then looking over and seeing Wayne Rooney next to me, looking across to him, it was one of those moments really that was so difficult to describe. The game for me, for that few minutes, felt irrelevant. I was in another place. My mind flipped back to so many special moments that I shared with Sir Bobby Charlton over the years. It's a bitterly sad day. He had an incredible journey, career and life. He was excellent for me. He was humble enough to pass on his experiences to try and help us and support us when he just didn't have to. I was greatly appreciative of him and his support all the time. And just finally, for your Middlesbrough Monday news, Middlesbrough FC women are out of the Women's FA Cup after pushing Hull all afternoon, but sadly at the losing end of a penalty shootout, losing 4-2 to Hull City. So unlucky to the Middlesbrough women's team as Middlesbrough now move on to midweek against Norwich. And we're gonna do them, laddies. We're gonna do them!
Mackem's and Proud. Black Cats News.
Yeah, how are Sunderland fans? Things have only got to get better, haven't they? Black Cats gaffer Tony Mowbray has offered some explanation as to why Sunderland started Saturday's defeat 2-1 at Stoke with no recognised strikers on the pitch, despite having 3 on the bench. The Sunderland boss saw his preparation for the game disrupted by the fact that a number of his players, including on loan Chelsea man Mason Burstow and fellow forward Nazari Rusin, were away representing their countries over the last fortnight, restricting the amount of time he could work with them. Sunderland face a bit of a selection dilemma in midfield tomorrow as Dan Neil returns to the squad after his controversial one-match ban following a red card that never should have been in the game against Middlesbrough before the international break. This means the Black Cats boss has Pierre Ekwa back from injury, Joe Bellingham and Dan Neil all vying for a space in the 2 holding berths in Mowbray's preferred lineup. And finally, staying with tomorrow night's fixture, the Foxes could be without 2 of their first choice wingers for the game. Good news. Leicester City are already without Casey McAteer after the winger was sidelined with a hamstring pull suffered a few weeks ago at Blackburn Rovers. But the East Midlands club now have a fresh concern after Turkish winger Yunus Akgun limped off during the weekend's match against Swansea. Foxes management are though hopeful that the latter will pull through and be ready for the big midweek clash, where we're going to do them.
Magpies and Proud. Mags News.
Good morning, Newcastle United fans. Newcastle returned from the international break to emphatically down an Eagles side who had shut them out in all 3 league and cup meetings last season. United ran out 4-0 winners with goals from Murphy, Gordon, Longstaff and Wilson, who went third in an all-time goal-scoring list behind Peter Beardsley and Alan Shearer. Reports in Italy state that federal prosecutor Giuseppe Shin will meet with lawyers acting for Sandro Tonali on Monday for what amounts to a plea bargaining. An announcement confirming the player's punishment for involvement in illegal sports betting will then follow, with the expectation that it will come before Newcastle's Champions League game on Wednesday night. A blanket ban on him playing football for at least the remainder of the current season appears inevitable, amid fears that a lengthier sanction could follow. Meanwhile, Tonali's agent, Rizzo, spoke out last night about the player. He said, "You saw the reaction by Newcastle fans. Sandro will pay for his mistakes, but not for things he didn't do." He continued that someone started to condemn Tonali in the media without knowing the reality. "I just hope the sanction will be correct," he told DAZN. And Newcastle's Premier League home meeting with Manchester United has been selected for live TV transmission by TNT Sports. Another uncomfortable kick-off time for Newcastle fans. This fixture will be played on Saturday, 2nd of December still, but it was an 8 o'clock kick-off. That's your Newcastle headlines for this Monday morning.
Steve and Rye, the North East Footy Breakfast.
The cat, the tune and the red.
And Ted, now you're with us. We'll change that jingle. We'll have the three of you on it. There you go.
Well, that's beautiful.
Don't ever say I'm not kind to Sunderland fans.
It'll be Steve, Ryan, and Ted. So it's still Steve's show. So we just remember that as well, lads. The rank of
actually,
we're all equal on here, lads. We're all equal on
Why not just put it in league out order? So I should be second, really, shouldn't it? Because there is still an almighty gap there, right?
I love it.
It's one that's closing very quickly. We're just going to, seeing as everybody's equal, you see, Steve's gone into this socialist world where everybody's equal. They all have the same amount of airtime. We all have the same amount of whatever it is. We've got to pull you up on a pronunciation, mate. We've got to pronunciate. You know, everybody's got to be treated equal, because it's normally Rye who gets pulled up with pronunciations.
I know exactly what it'll be. It'll be the guy who's the prosecutor.
No, it's not. No, it's even more fundamental than that. It's not Barnett, thankfully, like our good Aussie friend was saying. It's that TV company that begins with the letter D, mate.
I lost you there, Dave. Your reception went at my end.
Yeah. It's like it's like Ted disappearing when he came to talk about Sunderland. It's DAZN, mate. It's DAZN, not DAZN.
It doesn't sound right, lads. I'm rebranding it. I am rebranding it.
ZN for those listening at
home. DAZN for anyone else. For anybody
and
normal,
that's meant to be pronounced DAZN.
Yeah. So anybody normal pronounce it DAZN. Do not pronounce it DAZN. It doesn't sound right. That's official.
They've spent £5 million on their branding, and Steve destroys it in 3 seconds.
Yeah, so it'll be forever known as DAZN, and now I'm going to find something to talk about DAZN every morning now. So, and as offensive as it is me getting their name wrong, there's been quite a few offensive things going on in football over the weekend, lads. Offensive graffiti at Ibrox, offensive chants at Man City. Bottles being thrown in the Merseyside derby. It raises the question: are this generation of football fans less respectful than older generations? And I can speak certainly as an older football supporter. I would say that our generation, although there was always banter, although there was always somebody who would come up with a song and, you know, something which would be quite offensive to somebody on the pitch.
Mate, Rooney got it within 10 minutes at the Riverside, I'm telling you.
Exactly, I can imagine.
Something to do with grannies.
I can imagine. But yeah, I think it is getting worse. I do think it's getting worse. I mean, the world around us is getting worse on so many different levels. We seem to be entering a very dangerous stage in this planet's behaviour and humans' behaviour on this planet, and the same old problems are arising. Unfortunately, religion and politics, two things that you avoid like mad to talk about in the pub, or are causing some major issues around this world, and you know, unfortunately, whatever happens in the world, whatever happens socially, transpires. You know, it changes, and you know, it does get it gets embroiled in football. We've had this discussion on here about, you know, about the Wembley Arch being lit up. Should it be? Shouldn't it be? For various things. But now, you know, graffiti at Ibrox about a football disaster, for me is completely unacceptable. You know, chants at any football ground about, you know, whether it's about somebody passing away, but whether it's about an air disaster, whether it's about, you know, a particular crowd incident which has led to a loss of life. That's bang out of order. You know, there's you know, it's all right having a bit banter about a football player and having a, you know, and you know, it's singing something about a player and maybe put him off or whatever. But you know, there's levels you go to and there's levels you don't. And anyone throwing a missile at a football game should be banned automatically. And if the, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's a plastic bottle, whether it's a coin, whatever it is, throwing a missile at a football match could cause damage to somebody, and that really needs to be stamped out. And you know, there's been a lot of articles written in recent months as well about cocaine at football games. Are football fans taking drugs now, and on a massive level? Is that affecting the behaviour of some fans? I've got to be honest, as somebody who goes to away games with Newcastle, I've seen it. I have seen football fans acting in a particular way because of something they've taken, and it's not a good thing to have attached to a football fan base. I've seen home fans, I've seen away fans, you know, and it changes people's mentality. I know alcohol does. I know that we've seen you know, football hooliganism back in my day when I first started going in the 80s. You know, it was rife. You know, people wanting to kick 7 bags of, you know, 6-7 bells out of each other because of their football club. People organising it, getting on buses, 200 people travelling, you know, home and away to do whatever they want to do to get their kicks, and it's. You know, but it's a change in face of football, and it's not a nice one. It's definitely not a nice one, lads. And it did irk a little bit when you see it, because as a football supporter, we're all treated the same. And you know, we, unfortunately, the majority of football fans who go for the laugh, who go for a few pints with their mates to go and support our team and sing our hearts out for the lads, unfortunately, we're all judged by the behaviour of a minority. And you know, we're all then chucked into the same box, and decisions will be made about football fans and how they admit them into football grounds because of a minority, and I don't think that's right. So it was upsetting to read all of that this weekend. But I just wanted your opinions, lads. Do you think fans are less respectful now, or is it just because we're seeing different ways of being disrespectful? Is it better or worse?
I think for me, it's, you know, I'm kind of almost the same age as you, Steve. Not quite. I'm not at that level of vintage just yet. But you know, obviously,
he's a fine wine.
I grew up. Yes, exactly. More like a heavy vinegar. But yeah, I mean, I grew up watching football in the 80s, and you know, touching what Steve said as well, which again, I'm in danger of agreeing with the Geordie. It was bound to happen one day, I suppose. But yeah, there was that sort of that hooligan mentality. You know, we've seen things thrown from the stands. We've all seen those horrible images from the 80s where the likes of John Barnes were having pieces of fruit thrown at them and rubbish like that. The thing is now, I don't think it's getting worse as such. I think the access to it, because of the way social media works now, is, you know, back in the day it would have just been a word of mouth thing, and you either believed it or you didn't. You didn't really see an awful lot of it. You know, maybe it's one grainy still image or something like that. But now, because of the way social media works and all that, you know, I mean, there must be 1 million fan pages out there in terms of football and what goes on, whether it's, you know, riots in South American matches, whether it's, you know, chants that you see, you know, taken. I guess, you know, those 2 fans from Sheffield Wednesday who are in all sorts of bother about the Bradley Lowry thing. They've actually been caught by social media. The thing is, social media allows it to be so accessible, and all, you know, you have these people with the limited intelligence who think it's an acceptable way to behave. and that's the problem that we've got. Is it's so out there and so mainstream now, these problems, that it's just almost become normalised, and therefore it does become more of a problem. And not only that, you've got these like sort of these classic sort of rivalries and you know, hard men and all the hooligans and all that sort of thing. You've got muppets like Danny Dyer on TV cooing over them, wanting to be their best mate, like sort of saying how cool and hard everyone was. There weren't. Hooliganism is a cancer of football. Absolutely is, and it leads to that whole discrimination thing. It's every fan and club's responsibility to cut it out.
I totally agree. And on the there's a couple of things here, because I saw hooliganism at its worst outside the Riverside at the weekend. You know, myself and my son came out the stadium. We left the usual exit. As we get outside, there's Birmingham fans on one side of the road, Borough fans on the other side of the road, not a policeman in sight. I was amazed. My son said to me, "Where's the police?" I mean, it's, Birmingham can have a bit of a reputation, not as bad as others, but not a single policeman. There were 2 car park stewards stopping traffic from leaving the car park. That's all the officialdom that was present. Not a copper in sight. And then, it was, to be fair, it was the Birmingham fans goading the Borough fans and then running into each other. And they were scrapping. We've been sent, the Red radio station's been sent images by Borough fans saying, put this video on your site. Well, we won't, because we don't condone it and we don't want to promote fighting outside football stadiums. But it is still present. Nobody can tell me it's gone. And when you look at what was happening at Ibrox at the weekend, I mean, mocking 66 fans that died in a disaster in the 70s, mocking the death of the Queen. It's just abysmal, but there is a ray of hope, because I was looking at the Glasgow Times, and the way they covered the story, and in their comments afterwards, there are Celtic fans saying this is a disgrace. All decent football supporters. I'm reading a quote here from one of the fans who's left it on the Glasgow Times site. All decent football supporters are disgusted by this, and this is from a Celtic fan. So we are seeing comments like that where it is the stupid minority that spoil it for the majority.
And we do see it as well as, and we, Ted puts up a good point about social media there as well. But we do see when an issue like this comes up, there is a rallying support of social media people that get behind it and say that's not who we are as a fan base. That's not who we are as a club. We saw it with Middlesbrough just a couple of weeks ago with the racism issue. And it was fans, that pointed out that these other fans of our same, same fan base were being racist. And that's what I also like, is the power of the social media, because we do rally together and say, well, we're going to stamp it out, we're not going to stand for this, and we do out them, and everyone's got a camera on their phone and stuff like that. The drug thing is a surprising one for me. Here in Australia, we have those magical wands, you see them at the airport, where they just like sort of run it over you and you can get tested for drugs. We do that a lot around our grounds here in Australia. So the drug one for me is something that obviously, is probably hard to control and hard to stop, but, no one should be going to the football just to get on it and do that sort of stuff, because, for me, you're there to watch your club, you're there to watch your team. Obviously, you're there to be with your mates and have a good time, but, that obviously, when you're under the influence, anything can, mind control you. But going back to my point of seeing the good stuff, I mean, the one I want to talk about is the obviously, we saw Liverpool take on Everton, Merseyside derby on the weekend. And the one image that I was focusing on the weekend was one of Steve Kelly. I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but Steve Kelly is a Everton fan. He lost his brother at Hillsborough, and he now sits in his brother's seat at every Anfield derby in the Cop End. And he's in his full Everton kit. He's surrounded by Liverpool fans. But because of the respect, obviously they knew what his brother had been lost at Hillsborough. There is a picture, and I'll share it to you lads as well. And if you can see it, and that sort of story doesn't get promoted enough because of the disgusting and that, because that gets more traction, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? The missiles thrown at Man City at halftime is going to overshadow this, lad Steve Kelly, who is in full Everton gear, sitting in the Cop End and is fully known that he's okay to sit there, full Everton gear, because he's it was his brother's seat. So stuff like that, for me. Good news never really sells. I swear if you had a good news stand, it would never really sell, because, bad news is always the targeting of it. But, it's something that I don't think hooliganism is ever going to go away. There's always going to be one or two fans that steps in and takes it too far and does the wrong thing. But I still think that as a fan base, we can become louder than the minority in saying this is how we want to be. And you saw that with Celtic there saying that's disgusting. And I think as a collective we can come together and use our social media, because the bigger presences on social media are going to be the ones that are the majority of well-behaved fans that want to support their club and have a good day out. So I think it can go both ways, but it's not good to see that. And when you're talking about people that have lost their lives, like, come on, that's not that. Come on.
Yeah, bang out the border.
You look about there's no fiercer rivalry than that of Newcastle and Sunderland, and I'll always stand firm and compare that with the likes of Liverpool, Man United, with the Glasgow derby. It is fiercely battled out, I guess, and there'll always be that banter there. But at times of crisis, I think back to when that plane was shot down and 2 Newcastle fans unfortunately lost their lives in that. Sunderland fans were very, very quick to rally round. They raised money through GoFundMe and made donations to the club, to the supporters, to the families, and similarly with the Newcastle fans as well. With Bradley Lowry.
I was going to say,
they were phenomenal. The Newcastle fans were phenomenal in the way they backed that. And we'll have our banter. Me and Steve, hopefully, in the near future, get to have a derby where we can tear strips off each other. But at the same time, it's got to be done respectfully as well. At the same time.
Yeah, I agree, lads. And I'm glad you pointed those two things out, because I would have done the same. We've done it so many times. Newcastle and Sunderland fans. They're and I keep saying minority lads. There is a minority within the fan bases who would like to cause trouble between Newcastle, Sunderland, or Newcastle, Middlesbrough, or Sunderland, Middlesbrough. There is always going to be that kind of minority, and for us though, it's about the majority of the fans who do go and do stuff like that, who do reach out. There's nothing wrong with a bit of banter before a game and winding each other up and having a pop at each other's teams and players, but keep it to that level. When there's Geordies, Mackems and Smoggies come together in a charitable way, there's nobody better. There really isn't, because when you think about the the financial situation that many of us find ourselves in the northeast, it's the poor relation to the south, etc. We always dig deep for charity and support, and we support our own, and that the two situations, the plane crash and Bradley Lowry, two things that we all got behind as a region, and that makes you glow as a northeast football fan, that we all get behind each other.
100%.
Yeah, cool.
I completely agree. I think as you said, it is the minority, and you can see there, when even though we, you got Sunderland v Newcastle, fierce rivals, even Sunderland Middlesbrough, which isn't a derby, it is. We won 4-0, and even that, there's a level of respect that you just don't cross. Do you know what I mean? And you come on here, we come in here with 3 lads from all around the world. You know what I mean? And there's just things, we still care for each other and take care of each other, no matter the club you support. And I think there's a level of matureism, I guess, and a rallying support if something does happen at their club or even in their personal life. You know what I mean? And we saw that Norwich City video just the other day about and how popular that was, and how looking after your mate can be something we need to look at. So yeah, it's something that I unfortunately still happens, but I think we can get on top of it eventually.
Well said, guys. Well said. And thanks for ignoring me, right? 3 lads coming together, and Dave. I got it. I got it.
That's right. Sorry, Dave. I apologise. It's the whole.
You're like a radio dad. You're not one of the lads.
Yeah, I mean, we're not sure.
I'm just a monkey pressing the buttons. I know my position.
You're pulling us up on pronunciation. We got Dazin over here. Do you know what I mean? And you're out here like, hang on, Steve, it's the zone. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, Barnett, and you're like, hang on a second, right? Do you know what I mean? And then Ted comes in, and you're like, hang on. It's just, the radio dad. That's it.
The radio police. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, fellas. It is, and now I'm
going dad.
Fine vintage, I'm telling you. Just after 8:30, time to catch a bit of sports news. We'll be right back across the northeast with more slagging off of me, and we might even talk football.
Steve and Rye, the Northeast Footy Breakfast.
The Cat, the Tune, and the Red.
Okay, seeing as I'm just radio dad, I'll just hand it back to you guys. That's it. I'm going to sit back.
Lads, Accrington Stanley owner Andy Holt this weekend put his club up for sale using X, formerly known as Twitter.
Stop it.
I know, it's ridiculous. It's nearly as bad as DSN. But anyway, the quote's direct from him this weekend. I'm not replacing them. This is in a chat with fans. I'm not replacing the manager. I'm replacing me. I'm not the right person to take this forward. Aki needs to change and become a new club with new methods. I've nothing more to offer the club. I'm spent. I couldn't believe this. A club owner.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Basically putting his club up for sale using Twitter. Oh, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, is social media running the game? Is it ruining the game? What is going on with people taking to Twitter and just saying, right, that's it, I've had enough? I mean, what the fans must think? What would you think if Mugger came out and or somebody came out and said, right, that's it, I'm off, I'm not having this anymore? It's crazy, isn't it? We're living in some kind of parallel universe now.
I mean, how disrespectful to the
weird,
fans and the fan base. You know what I mean? Like, how disrespectful to do it on social media as well. It just, and to take the mickey out of it even more. Do you know what I mean? He then has a pop. So it's not even a professional statement. Do you know what I mean? It makes your club the laughing stock as well, because it's then, like you said, and we said this just before the break as well, that it's not just the one person that gets targeted here. It's the club. So it's the Accrington Stanley. Do you know what I mean? It's the club that gets thrown there. It's Accrington Stanley have done this, they've done that. It's not, the CEO by himself has done that. And he's taken it upon himself to go and do that and make the club a bit of a laughing stock. And at some point, to be a CEO or, a club owner, you've got to have some nous about you, don't you? You've got to have money smarts, business smarts, whatever it is. And for him to turn around and act like that is embarrassing.
Well, he shot himself in the foot as well, because if he is genuinely selling the club, having like sort of I can only describe it as a hissy fit.
It was,
that's what it is. All he's done there is devalue the club, because anybody who was interested in that is thinking, well, he wants out, so whatever he's wanting for it, I'm going to absolutely lowball him because I know he wants out anyway, and he's had enough.
Yeah.
So he's
exactly
really mismanaged it. But the level of immaturity, it's like a couple of teenagers arguing on MSN. I'm showing my age by saying MSN. I realise that now.
It'll be MySpace next.
Yeah. MySpace is just Tom sat on his own now, isn't it? But yeah, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. We had a similar thing with Stuart Donald. He was quite active when he was chairman and had this social media presence. But when he said he was going to be all open and above board, there was murmurs that the fans actually were the ones who weren't happy about that. And then more recently, Sheffield Wednesday, their chairman as well, coming out with these most bizarre rants. And it's kind of like it's making a mockery of the clubs. And I feel for their fans, I really do. It's because their local rivals must be loving it.
I think it's a point that's where. Yeah. Do you think it's a point where we've got, so for instance at Middlesbrough, Steve Gibson, there's been a lot of questions asked of Steve Gibson recently when Middlesbrough were doing badly, the summer signings and all that sort of stuff. There's always questions that go to Steve Gibson when every fan at Burrows always says, Steve, come forward and talk. We want to hear more from you, because he doesn't really do press conferences. He doesn't really have a social media presence. Is it something which a club owner should be off? It should be there sort of thing where club owners shouldn't be on social media, and is it, we see obviously, Newcastle, we see pictures of their social, their ownership and stuff like that at the games and stuff like that, but we don't really see them on a social media presence. Same with Sunderland. There's been questions obviously of Sunderland and Mogger and whether they're going to sack him and all that sort of stuff. But is it a more professional way to go about it, lads, by not being on social media when you're in a club hierarchy position?
Newcastle are in a strange position, because obviously they have Meerdad and Jamie Rubin both on Twitter, so they are both shareholders at the club. They have both actively been tweeting since the takeover that so we have them. Amanda Staveley doesn't have a presence on Twitter, but she does have a presence on Instagram, and I've noticed she's been interacting with supporters this season. So it is something that our owners have. We don't have Yasser Al Ramai and the chairman. He's got a LinkedIn page, but he's not prolific on any other social media, and certainly I've not seen him interact with fans on LinkedIn. But ultimately, it does seem to be part of the game. It has pluses and minuses. When the going is good and things are going okay, then obviously everything in the garden's rosy. But I think what you're seeing is at times Newcastle fans, copying them into tweets about ticketing, which is a major issue, which we've discussed on here. When people aren't happy about the way things are going, and that's when when things aren't going well. That's when being on social media is going to be a nightmare for anybody. I was really just surprised that this guy completely, lost the plot, and like Ted says, he's devaluing his club by going on and doing that. I think it's ludicrous. I think he should have had more sense. Has he had a couple of glasses of, his favourite vino on the night time, and and then regretted it the next morning? Who knows? But it's just. Yeah, it's crazy. I think you've got to err on the side of caution, and that's it's the club's job to employ somebody who's media savvy. I mean,
social media managers.
In 2012, the official club account at Newcastle United attacked me personally. It had a go at me. Oh, here we go, Steve Wraith trying to cause unrest in the fan base again. I mean, that went viral. I mean, Simon Bird at the Mirror did a big article about it. It was embarrassing for the club. It wasn't embarrassing for me. I was simply pointing out what everybody else was saying about certain things. But just because whoever was in charge of the club Twitter account at the time wanted to have a pop, then they chose to do it behind the veil of Newcastle United's official club Twitter. It was a bad move for the club, and it made them look stupid. And they just never really thought about it at the time. Whoever was involved. But yeah, it can have pros and cons, as we know. Social media, we've talked about it on here before. But I think owners should really tread carefully. And you wouldn't, you don't see the Glazers out there. You don't see, see John Henry at Liverpool on Twitter, and that's the way it should be. And I think it's ludicrous to have someone come out and say something like that when they own the club.
I think it came across very amateur. It was like sort of, not the kind of cast aspersions on middle-aged men, because there's more of them here than what we probably care to admit. But it just it just felt like it should have been accompanied by a badly taken selfie or a picture of him holding a fish. You know what I mean? It was just so like
a Foster.
Painfully white middle-aged man kind of rant. It was just like, God, it was horrible, absolutely horrible. But there we go.
Talking about rants, and just while you're still on that horse there, Ted, what about Mogger's post-match, where I
know what you're gonna say.
Well, let's listen to it then. Let's have a listen to it, because we love Mogger on this show. All of us love Mogger on this show. Absolutely.
I love you, Mogger.
Can you go to a music bed of Crowded House? Always take the weather with you.
I can do that if you want. But he references Storm Barbet as part of the reason why Sunderland didn't play well. Let's have a listen.
We didn't have the team back. We in the eye of a storm. Storm Barbet. We've been trying to train it for 2 days. It's not ideal, and so probably there's a reason why the fluency of the team wasn't quite where it is. If you picture 8 or 9 players going away and all having different ideas of how their coaches want to play and what their jobs are and how they play, and then they have to come back in 1 or 2 training sessions and get it all back up to speed. It looked like we weren't fully assured of what our jobs were on the pitch at times today.
Now, I don't think Storm Barbet was regionalist when it hit the UK. I don't think it just hit Wearside.
I know. Listen, Mogger's doing what all good managers should do, and that's protect his players. I don't agree with them. I think it's the most flimsy, cloppish excuse that I've heard. There's a new phrase that we've used. It's a bit of a stretch, Tony. It wasn't, everybody had that same sort of problem. Absolutely, it was difficult, but everybody had the same sort of difficulties. Not everybody was away on international duty as well. Let's be clear about that. We have got some good players, but they're not all world-class internationals and all sort of flying all over the world. But fair play to him. He's not sort of said, well, the lads were poor or kind of stuck it on anybody. So fair play. He's doing the right thing, being the father figure like you are, Dave.
Do you think it's
that was a kick in the yeah.
I loved it. Do you think it's got anything to do with Sunderland being a younger squad, that Mogga's got that sort of protective aspect? Because we know Sunderland have got such young stars and such a young squad, more than most. I mean, the recruitment for Sunderland over recent years has been 19 to 20, obviously Joe Bellingham and everything like that. Is it because of the younger nature of the squad that they could have been affected more by the storm and the international presence and the travelling and that, rather than a squad of 25-year-old plus?
I think it's a cracking point, right? Yeah, I think there is a little bit of that. You've got the likes of you've mentioned Joe Bellingham. You've also got Chrissy Rigg, who's just 17, turned 17. No, sorry, 16 he is.
I mean, they are young boys, like.
That's no experience in the world of football, is it? So yeah, maybe just having that disruption. Maybe there might be some credibility in this after all. Thank you for digging Mogger out of this one. Maybe there is some credibility in that though. Yeah, because the likes of Riggy and Joe Bellingham, they aren't used to that, I suppose. So it's out of the comfort zone, but they've got to learn and they've got to learn quickly that's going to happen. Not all of the team is going to be available to train at the same time.
I can see it right now. That's going to be Ted's excuse every time something goes wrong at Sunderland now. They were so young, they were inexperienced. They'd never faced a 3-0 defeat in Leicester before. So yeah, indeed.
Well, we got to go from Mogga, lads, because Mogga obviously, protecting his players there, a bit of a funny statement at the end, but I want to flick it on to Steve and Eddie Howe, because honestly, I was so impressed, and I said this in the WhatsApp. We had a good chat after it. We didn't catch Eddie Howe's presser on Friday, but the way he handled young Tonali, and we got to remember Tonali's a young kid as well. He's 22, 23, and he's going through one of the hardest times probably in his life that he's ever faced. The way Eddie Howe came out and spoke, mate, I almost got a tear to my eye, because the way he rallied around him, the way he spoke, the love that he outpoured for this young lad who's going through one of the most toughest times was incredible. And to show Eddie Howe as a man, let alone a coach, was on display so evidently in that presser that I've ever seen. And I was left, applauding how Eddie handled it. You were impressed, Stephen, and the way he spoke about Tonali and the situation?
No doubt about it, mate. I mean, ultimately, we said on Friday that he was going to be running the gauntlet, and I think I mentioned that Razor from Radio Newcastle, Matthew Raisbeck was going to be first in, as he was, and the tone was set by Razor, really asking, had he was he available, had he trained, and Eddie just talked about the situation that he and the club had found himself in with his player, and he had trained with the club, that analysed him, basically said that they had a very difficult 2 weeks, but that it was a football decision that he would make, nothing else, and it was simple as that. That really set the that set the tone. I think there was nothing short than of maybe 25 questions on Tonali in the entire press conference from different people. Some of the nationals went harder, as you would expect. Some of them quite rightly pointing out that Eddie Howe was doing his press conference in front of a Fun 88 sponsorship, which of course is still an official club partner. People saying, should gambling be taken away from, should gambling sponsors be removed, with immediate effect from football in general. And Eddie Howe, as always, give a diplomatic answer. That's not for him, and that's not his decision to make. That's not his remit. His remit is to manage the football team. Ultimately, again, he was asked about the statement that was put out, and he talked continuously about, the player, about his welfare, that they've got to find solutions to help him, that they have to basically help him recover from what he's going through, and he wanted the fans to throw their arms around him and protect him, and you know, from his perspective, he got exactly what he wanted from the supporters, you know, at the weekend. And for me, you know, I think some of the questions that came from the floor, Keith Downey from Sky asking, you know, should there be, you know, maybe gambling education for players? Well, he said that, yeah, that does happen as far as, you know, Newcastle United's concerned and Premier League, you know, clubs are concerned. We get that in our academies, whereas, you know, obviously Tonali wasn't brought up in the UK, didn't come through our academy, came through Milan. So, you know, I think we covered everything. I think you know, Eddie played with a straight bat, as he always does. I don't think that, you know, people's questions such as Louise Taylor, she gets a rough ride, I think, from Newcastle fans. I think the question about Fun 88 was justified. I think she should have asked that, and I think the answer that, you know the fact that, you know, Eddie just said it's not my decision, it's something I won't get drawn into, was fair enough. But, you know, ultimately the questions had to be asked. I thought Craig Hope asked a question which all the fans wanted to know, which was, you know, Newcastle are going to get punished for something which essentially didn't happen at Newcastle. It happened at another club. You know, what's your stand on that? He wouldn't answer that question either, because he doesn't want to get dragged into a battle with AC Milan. We've got to play them again. We've got to play them at St James's Park. They're going to feel a bit, you know, awkward coming to St James's Park anyway. But you know, I think Eddie Howe played the game. I think he played the game as he always does. I'm proud to have him as our manager. And I tell you what, you know, once Tonali serves his ban and comes back, he'll want to run through a brick wall for Eddie Howe and Newcastle United after that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was
one of the best pieces of man management since Bobby Robson, I thought, to be honest with you.
I agree.
There was something wonderfully Robson-esque about it, you know, that arm around a player and kind of, you know, just putting the player first. And that there's not a lot of, you know, good, honest managers who are loyal to players like that. And fair play to Eddie Howe, I thought was a fantastic piece of management, that.
By the way, fellas, he's here.
Good morning. Good morning.
Morning, Daz.
Dazzy!
How are we doing? We all right?
Dazin, should I call you?
Dazin, yeah.
Great show.
Daz on.
Yeah, I will be soon. Yeah, great show this morning, guys. Nice to have you with us, Ted.
Thank you very much, Darren. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, obviously. Enjoyed the Borough win at the weekend.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
you did.
How did Sunderland get on? I didn't see that score.
Nice that these ended after 11 seconds of conversation.
So it was nice anyway. Is that the
time? We can hear your cats behind you, Ted. They need some food, obviously. Yeah. Oh, brilliant. That killed everything.
Well, we got a big
sorry about that.
Coming up on this week, don't we? We got a big week of football. We got midweek games. We've obviously got Middlesbrough travel to Norwich. We've got Sunderland going to Leicester. And Steve, you've got what is it? Some weird
junior game, isn't it?
Or something? Yeah. Junior game, under 18s or something. So it's a big
the Geordies are going to get stuffed off of Mackem. You do know that, don't
you? I'm really looking forward to it, actually. No, it should be a good week, but we're Middlesbrough obviously going down to Norwich. It's going to be a tough ask.
But how's Norwich? Not a lucky ground.
Did you see Norwich on the weekend?
Yeah.
Norwich were 2-0 up, ended up getting stuffed by Leeds 3-2 in the end. So a little bit of lack of confidence there at Norwich. Obviously Ben Gibson as well, the centre back at Norwich, just the nephew of the owner of the Middlesbrough Football Club. So a little bit of pride on the stake there, I think, at the Gisborne dinner table.
Doesn't bode well. It's not a lucky ground for the Borough. And then Leeds do that, so Norwich are going to come. Oh no, I can see it. The writing's on the wall. No.
Well, we don't have the Riley McGree to score a 40-yard stunner this time as well. So is he still battling, coming back from injury?
Is he sunning himself on Bondi at the moment? I mean, we haven't seen him in ages.
He's the poor lad's got it's pretty bad foot injury. So we'll have to wait and see what comes of that. So. But yeah, no, we'll have to wait and see. Have you got any concerns? I know, Steve, we've spoken and high praise of the weekend. Is there any concern at all for any player at Newcastle at the moment, injury-wise or form-wise?
I mean, injury-wise, you're always worried about Callum Wilson. We've talked about him earlier on. If you lose a forward, if you lose Isak or you lose Wilson, that's a big problem. Because Newcastle, you've got Anthony Gordon, who's proven useful in front of goal, but you would like to think you could get get through to January and then sign another forward. That is the one area of concern. Other than that, Willock, he was out. He was out with a hamstring, and then obviously sustained an Achilles. We're going to have to treat him with kid gloves coming back. And Joe Linton, he's picking up a few knocks, and ultimately, I mentioned he wasn't the greatest. He wasn't the greatest performer at the weekend. Didn't have a bad game, just wasn't the greatest. But other than that, no, I'd say no. We're all right on the injury front at the moment.
Tell you, I'd love to start on this very fine show of yours, gentlemen, not mine, of course, because I'm just a monkey grinding things.
Radio dad.
Yeah, that's me. I wouldn't mind getting some fans on who've been going to games next morning. Do you reckon we could do it? Should we throw out the invitation?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Love to have them.
Yeah, do it.
I mean, if you've been to the game and you've had a good, or a bad experience or anything like that, we'd love to talk to you and have you on the show for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the Borough fans might still be coming back from Norwich, who knows? But there you go. No, any fans out there, Sunderland, Newcastle, Borough, come on after the game the next morning and give us your views. We'd love to do that. There's a daft idea. Anyway, fellas, we're out of time. We've done it. Daz is next with all his mid-morning nonsense.
Absolutely, and we've got a fabulous interview this morning with stand-up comedian Ria Lena, who's playing at the Stand in Newcastle on Friday. Really, really funny lady, the only UK Filipina stand-up comedian, and she is brilliant. So we've got her on the show. Excited about that this morning.
Well, there you go. Wonderful stuff, and we'll be all back tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock. Fellas, we're out of here. Ted, great to have you on, mate. And
Good morning, lads.
I almost said just by being a Mackem, but there you go. It's not that. No, I'm going to behave myself. We
Despite
love it.
my hideous deformity.
And your hatred of referees. But then that's for another conversation. See you, fellas. We'll catch you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, lads.
See ya.
From Yarm to Yibby, Harrington to Horsley Hill, Swarwell to Silverlink. Steve and Rye, the North East Footy Breakfast.
Right across the North East, the Red, the Toon and the Cat.